Welcome to the ZNL Podcast, a podcast brought to you by ZN, the OG digital agency in Brussels.
Hello and welcome to this very special episode of ZNL. I am delighted to have a very special guest, Kritikos, who is the founder of the book club, a very interesting and unusual book club we're going to talk about in a minute. He's also a former student, so I'm delighted to see him again. And he's a very talented artist, musician, influencer. You've done a lot of different things, so welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm happy to be
Well,
here.
I'm really happy to touch base with you again. You have, since graduating, you've done lots of different things, but the main thing that you've been focusing on is this book club. So for our viewers and listeners, tell us, what is this book club? What makes it different? And why did you start it?
Okay, so the book club is an idea that I came with, or it's a concept that I came up with when I was trying to get my friends to read books that I liked reading, and I knew that they would like the books. And so what I did is I gave my friend a book. I said, in 2 weeks, let's talk about this, because I know there's some chapters in here that you'd like to discuss. And 2 weeks later, they didn't read the book. And so I decided to just get them to read one paragraph, and they were able to discuss the topic that was brought up in that one paragraph. So then I decided to put the quotes onto cards. So this is a book club card. And basically, the way it works is each card has a quote from the book and a question that talks about a larger conversation. And so the conversations that happen at the book club are not just about, the chapters, the characters, but they also talk about the message that is brought up in whether it's a fiction or non-fiction book.
Now,
and we do these conversations in groups.
Right, and so you just talked about this experience with your friends. This was before the book club, and this gave you the idea to do the book club, or was that the birth of the book club?
That was the birth of the book club. So I had these conversations with my friends, and I saw that it worked. And then I decided to just, try to find a location that would be open to hosting us. And we started in 2019, December 12th. And we had a second session at the Uni in Odyssey, K11, in March of 2020, right before the lockdown. And then, everything shut down for a bit. But I still continued online. And then when the world was opening up again, I started it. And as things have it, there was a higher need for community and conversations and clubs and, grouping. So the book club really took off, and that's when it became a business.
Okay, so just go back to reading. So were you an avid reader as a kid, as a student? Did you always enjoy reading? And do you see that in people around you, or did you see yourself as very different because you liked reading?
Yeah, I've always been an avid reader since I was a kid. Even before I knew how to read, I would carry books around. And as I was learning the letters and how to read the alphabet, I tried deciphering like billboards and adverts that I would see in the city or things I would see on TV and in media around me. And then, of course, that evolved as I grew up in school. I'd start reading, Roald Dahl, Anthony Horowitz, Mallory Blackman, and all these different authors and books that really shaped me as a kid. And then as I got into uni, I started seeing uni lectures and uni books as work, and I just had to get through an exam period so I can continue reading. So reading was really always the main thing for me.
Yeah, I always loved books and reading, and there was a library. I don't know if you've experienced a public library. When I was growing up, I would go to the library, and I remember that there was a kids section, and when I was young, I would love to go into the grown-up section to pick up books that I'm not supposed to. I don't know why they had this thing, and I thought, like, okay, this must be interesting because they've put it in a section where I'm not supposed to go. And I always love to pick up those books. I didn't necessarily understand them, but and I like to take a lot of books out and just put them somewhere, even if I didn't read them. Did you have access to a library?
Yes, in Belgium, because I grew up in Zambia. And I moved to Belgium when I was 10 years old. And when I moved to Belgium, that's when we had the access to the library of our school. So I went to the British School of Brussels,
Right.
and it was mandatory to read a book every 2 weeks. And they had this library. It was just really interesting. My first day, they introduced me to this library, and I just see this like it's like a well of wisdom and just so many options. And so yeah, that's where it started. But public library, I think I was mainly focusing on those libraries that were in my schools to go. But growing up, my dad would take me to Waterstones, and that's where
Okay.
we'll just buy books instead of borrow them.
Excellent. Yeah, I don't know if public libraries are still, being visited a lot nowadays. I remember this being something that, because obviously you can get a lot of the books online, different versions on different digital formats. But yeah, I really like the experience of books. So you're a personal book lover, and what do you see around you when you were students? Do you see people having this? People talk a lot about the decline of reading. But I feel that they've talked about it for a long time. Even when I was growing up, I feel that there was already a narrative. So do you think that people around you don't read? Or do you have friends who are like book lovers and then some who don't? What's your sense of where we are as a society when it comes to reading?
I do have a mix. So there are friends of mine that do read, and there are friends of mine that aren't really big on reading at all. And I've started to notice the friends of mine that actually do read are reading less. So
Right.
we're all getting further and further away from books and reading. The most that I see maybe is reading like online, like ebooks or essays online. But TikTok and I'd say the TikTokization of social media, because this whole format of a video that takes up your whole screen and then you just swipe and it's another video. Um, TikTok really revolutionized that and changed the game, changed the algorithm, and changed the way we operate as a society. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had actually. I was never that interested in TikTok because for me it's slightly different generation. But I was kind of using it quite a bit in the last few months, and I realized this is such a brain sucking device because there's nothing interesting in it, and for some reason. It makes you look at something. So I just deleted it just a few days ago because I thought like I'm never really getting that much out of it. Whereas
Yeah.
if I'm going even, if you construct a better list, I guess you can get better quality. But people talk about this TikTokization of content and social media, but at the
Yeah.
same time, we have these incredibly long podcasts and articles. So I'm curious. I feel that there is something that's a massive exaggeration because people like to sit and listen to something. Maybe they don't consume the information the same way, but I think the idea that they've lost their attention span is exaggerated. What do you feel about that, and how do you explain these 3-hour podcasts in a world where we're supposed to have a 3-minute attention span?
I do feel that podcasts are also starting to seem quite dragging now. To at least the people that have come to the book club, I've had asked a few questions to them, and they would rather listen to a long form TikTok or YouTube video than
Right.
actually listen to a podcast that dives into something deeper for an hour and 2 hours long. But you brought up podcasts and something else, articles. Yes. So there's a social media called Substack that helps a lot
Yeah.
with this need for people that want to read. But even Substack has this sort of hybrid Twitter section and a hybrid TikTok section where you can watch videos. But of course, the beauty of Substack is that all the information, or at least most of the stuff that you see on there, is substantial and can teach you something, or they actually ask. It's similar to a forum where people can like philosophize. But yeah, it's still something we talked about earlier, is just the digitization of things. But
Yeah.
sorry, I was gonna say, but there are of course exceptions where people are staying grounded when it comes to how they how they consume media, the type of music media they consume. Um, but of course, it's an exaggeration because that's a general consensus from what I've seen, at least.
Yeah, now I want to go back to your book club. I mean, it's a quite a specific business idea or project for somebody to pursue.
Mhm.
So can you tell me, I mean, you said, okay, I wanted to get my friends to talk about books. So what is the vision behind this? What are you trying to do? Because I know that you're somebody who's very passionate. So what gets you up in the morning, and why do you think this is such a an exciting thing to do?
My main goal is to make reading and books cool again, and so it's basically to do what we're trying to what we just talked about, to make the opposite effect. And I guess what I'm trying to do is also just really bring books and reading and knowledge, not only to the forefront, but to make it accessible to all. Because the social media and everything, those are accessible. That's why people are able to spend hours on TikTok. It's a free platform, etc. But they do take your data, and it's it would just feel nice that we live in a world where people can actually gather and have conversations about things like love, friendship, but also we could talk about football and maybe the social impact of football, things of that nature. And I want to feed into that, bring that back, and make it cool, make it attractive, especially. And that's where I bring in my knowledge from marketing, especially digital marketing, to sort of meet the people where they're at. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to come to that in a second, but the
Yeah.
idea, reading a book for a lot of people, especially people who like books, is a solitary experience. You read the book and you do it in your own time. You've really been talking about two things. One is what's in the book, and the other thing is community and bringing people together. So,
Yeah.
what is the thing that you think is the most important in what you're doing? Is it the community side or the reading and understanding what's in a book?
I would say, hmm, it's interesting because I would say it's the community side because I see how it really feeds people. In the beginning, it was always just to get the messages from certain books out there and get people talking about these topics and subjects. But as I see especially in a post-pandemic world, the community side of it really, really is essential. Um, and and in the long run, I have managed to sort of balance between the two, where we'd have a conversation at the Van Gogh Museum, and we're talking about Van Gogh's letters to his brother, Van Gogh's life, the art in Van Gogh's, the philosophy in Van Gogh's art, and at the same time still bring people together, complete strangers, to come together and talk about depression, talk about brotherhood, talk about the idea of working and seeing that your work is not going anywhere in your lifetime, the same way Van Gogh had. So I'm sort of walking a thin line, but in the beginning it was always just to get the message across, or to get these messages from the book into people's minds and into people's conversations. Um, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and so obviously, you love books, you want to get people to read books, but you use social media to promote your activities. And you've been, using this for quite a while. I remember from your student days, you're already very active on different platforms. So what is your relationship with social media? And, are you comfortable using it? Is it something that you find disturbing, given all the things people talk about, the impact on mental health, the way it
Yeah.
might make it more difficult to read? So are you still an avid user, consumer, and how do you reconcile the tension, I would say, between the good and the bad of social media?
I would say that I am still definitely an avid user, but I've managed to sort of distance myself from it. So when I do share content, or when I do make any publications, it's quite um, sparse. There's quite some time between them. I focus on quality output rather than quantity. Whereas before, I think it'll be quality and quantity, and I just really want to get things out there, whether it's a picture of my food or an update on how my day went, etc. But yeah, before I was in music and everything, and I think that was a very big difference. But with the music promotional content that I would be making, and especially when I was a younger person in high school, I had a YouTube channel, and that's what helped me sort of get a better taste and a better skill set for editing videos, figuring out how to capture attention from the beginning, using sound effects, all these different things that really help me in social media creation today. So it doesn't feel like too much work when I do post something. So it's something that I'm very familiar with. It's a language that I speak as a zillennial, which is between millennial and Gen Z. But
Okay.
at the same time, I do try to understand that it's very good to stay grounded and not get too involved when it comes to likes, numbers of followers, and all those things. But
Right now,
sorry,
yep.
I was just going to add that I do understand how important it is to reach the people because social media is where everybody. That's the hub, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's shaping the way we think. I think it's it's we just need to learn how to use it so it doesn't destroy our brain. And so I think we have to be much more kind of mindful in how we use different channels. I think that I feel that with LinkedIn, to be honest, I have a pretty healthy relationship. I try to write an article, and it takes me quite a while to write it, and then it's kind of a satisfying discussion. So I feel actually it's quite healthy, and I read some interesting stuff. So I feel that the more I go towards Instagram and then TikTok, then it becomes very much less healthy in terms of the stuff that the algorithm throws at me. But I want to come back to the book club. I mean, this is obviously something you're passionate about. You talked about your love of books, your desire to share that experience with other people. Is this? I mean, what's the business model? How can you sustain yourself? Because I like to talk about to young people about what they can do. You've obviously followed your passion, but your passion has to feed you. So how do you do that? Is it a sponsorship model? How is that working out?
So as I started the book club back in 2019, it started off as a one-off event where we have people come, they buy tickets, and from the beginning, the venue would pay the book club because it's basically like a service rendered to the venue. And from there, that's how it continued. So either the venue would pay the book club, and so would have a fixed fee, and then the people that come would, of course, pay for tickets to the venue, and so that's makes it a win-win for the business that's hiring the book club and the people that come. So it's sort of B2B slash B2C. And then when it is with the people or the audience of the book club, it's a ticket sale situation where it's B2C. And I'm looking to expand now into making the book club cards into card games. So as I showed you the cards earlier, I've got a whole deck of cards. This is poetry of the world. So I did a book club about poetry. I could do about love, friendship, all those things. And my goal is to make this into a card game that can be flying off shelves and partner up with like publishing companies, etc. And then furthermore, like a podcast, things of that nature. But as of now, it's mainly an event-based book club.
Okay, take us through the format. So how many people come in the room, and then you give them cards? They haven't read the book necessarily, so do you introduce the book? Do you start with the questions? How does it work?
Okay, so as an example, I would take the Hoxton, which is a hotel that I've got a partnership with. So for the Hoxton, they want to host a dinner because they're trying to feed their F&B. So I'd prepare a theme that's around, for example, the last one that we did was around March 8th. So for International Women's Day, I prepare a theme that talks to an audience. I make it enticing and attractive for the audience. I have a list of books that I prepare and a list of cards that I prepare for the conversation. They come to the book club, the Hoxton, the venue. They pay for their dinner, and then, as you said, I prepare cards for the conversation. There's a list of books, and I introduce the books. I introduce the importance of the books. I introduce the importance of the topic, and then we get into a conversation around that dinner. So it becomes a whole full like event curated for the people that are joining the table. And then on the other hand, for Hoxton, it's their branding because they could say, "Oh, we hosted an event for International Women's Day. It was hosted by the book club, etc." But that's really the main format. Those are the pieces of the puzzle that have to connect together to make it work. And then, of course, on the next side, there's corporate sessions where I do book clubs for like internal teams. So, like with Netflix, with Nike, we did one with High Snobiety, which is a magazine in Berlin and in Amsterdam, where we talked about certain topics that they wanted to talk about with their employees, whether it's a team building session or a brainstorming session for future projects. That one's, of course, I mean, it's consulting, so that's got its own type of fee or its own type of business model, which is already made. I just add the business, I just add the new touch of the book of Excel. And then, of course, with that, we have a list of books that they could either purchase for their employees or the employees can, like, list them for later on. And then lastly, we have the book of XL, which is my take on the traditional panel talk, where instead of a panel talk where there's a stage of panelists and an audience, I put the panelists in the middle of the room and have an audience sat around the room. So it feels like a roundtable conversation, except we have the experts at least in front of the microphones.
Do you have the authors coming to your sessions?
Sometimes, but quite rarely, because of course, a lot of the books that I read are usually from like British authors or American or African authors. But I did a collaboration with the European Union or the European Commission, sorry, and there we had an author join the table.
I feel that Brussels really needs a war and peace book club discussion, because you can talk about war, you can talk about Russian culture, you can talk about life, emotions, and everything else. One of my favorite books. That's why I was mentioning. I don't know if you already picked that one, but I think it's a good topic.
No, please, I'd love to read it.
Now, one of the things that if you read the news, especially on social media nowadays, one of the main topics is this increased polarization, division in society, the increase of hatred. We keep hearing it out of the US conversation, but it's clearly spreading everywhere. When you bring these groups together, do you see that polarization in the room? That's my first question. And I know that you've looked at very different audiences, so maybe you can share a little bit about how different audiences react to polarizing questions.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question, because through the book club, I've started to notice some psychological tricks that can be done to avoid highly tense conversations when it comes to these topics. Excuse me. And I've noticed the main ingredient with the book club is to have a round table. If everyone sat down at the same table and sat, side by side or facing each other, but as long as we're at the same table, there is very, very low chance of like high tension. What's this? High tension, highly tense conversations that could like take off into another type of conversation. If that makes sense. And with that being said, I have noticed that with the book club, people disagree, and if they do disagree, it would be respectfully, and it would be in the sense of trying to understand the other person's perspective, or at least come to a middle ground. And if we're not coming to a middle ground, we sort of have this understanding that we just agree to disagree, and then we move on to the next card. And the beauty of the book club concept is that each card has a different topic or a different conversation. So if at one point it starts to get rowdy or it starts to feel tense, I just say let's move on to the next card. And the next, one card could be talking about gay rights or something like something that's connected to race. And then if we move on to the next card, it could talk about dreams or friendship or heartbreak. And so the atmosphere in the room completely changes with the cards, if that makes sense. But I have noticed that we've had a book club where there was 2 Israelis present and 1 Palestinian and a Sudanese. And that was a book club where we were talking about love in different cultures. And so we're talking about, wedding ceremonies or rituals that are done before a wedding, courting practices from different cultures, different things like that. And it was so interesting because these people that are from very polarizing and very different cultures and different backgrounds and political states are able to still bond and connect through conversations like how did your parents meet, or what is deemed a respectable woman or respectable man in your culture when it comes to dating and courting people. Yeah, I think the beauty of the book club is it doesn't only bring people together to have conversations that are very important, but it also helps disarm them by asking questions that aren't just related to the polarizing topic. So we sort of humanize the person that we're talking to, rather than, as you mentioned, online. If you see a Democrat, sorry, if you see a Democrat talking to a Republican, they're only going to see that this person's a Republican or this person's a Democrat, so I'm going to speak to them at that level. But if you understand that, this person probably lost their father, or somebody's dealing with a friend that's dying of cancer, that's when you can sort of see more humanness in the person that you're discussing with online, at least. And it really helps. I think once, like you said, with the polarization, etc., it really helps to realize that we are humans. We are dealing with different situations and different things that we can also relate on.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting, and I have this feeling that we're experiencing a story of division and polarization. We've had 3 assassination attempts now in the US, in the political world. Violence is becoming a norm. I mean, this is, I think, the thing that is shifting. It's like, well, it's just another assassination attempt, as if these things were becoming normalized and accepted. And at the same time, as you said, people, if they talk to each other as human beings, they don't have that kind of almost stereotypical image. And I think we're seeing this in the US. The US has become like you have the pro-Trump and the anti-Trump, and they all hate each other. And it's as if they can't find common ground to discuss. Yet when you put people in the room together, they can explore these topics. Now, I don't know if how your book club would work in a room with Republicans and Democrats in the US. Who knows? I don't know how it's got to. I feel that at least in Brussels and Europe, people are still able to have disagreements without becoming immediately aggressive and ideological about it, although it depends on the topic. But maybe, is your experience with these conversations, does it make you optimistic about the fact that we could maybe bring people together despite those divisions? Or do you think that actually these divisions are getting worse despite the fact that people remain the same? I mean, are you an optimist or a pessimist when it comes to our polarized political environment?
I have to be honest. I feel like I'm a pessimist. I was very optimistic in previous years, but as I see, it's really unfortunate. I think it was Trevor Noah that brought this up in a podcast that he did, but he said that we've sort of been tricked, or we've been misfed, or fed false information by Disney, or just Hollywood in general, where there's always a happy ending. The bad guys will lose and the good guys will prevail, always, in every movie from Hollywood. And we ended up sort of seeing the world in that same way. But sometimes the bad guys win, and they will continue winning if they control the cards on the deck, the cards on the table. It's quite difficult to see a brighter future. So, and with this being said, I became a pessimist, or I became more pessimistic as I saw, or as I see things going, because in order to have a conversation with somebody else, both parties have to be willing to actually have a conversation and see a person with, like, see a person and acknowledge the common ground that you have. But as you said, with the polarization and everything going on, it's quite difficult to get people to actually be open to that. Of course, with the book club, I'm having small fractions of the communities, like 20 to 25 people per session. But to get legislators and people that actually do bring change to the societies that they're in, to actually have these important conversations, it's a bigger task.
Yeah. Now, you've been doing these book clubs in very different and interesting places, from the corporates you mentioned to schools and even prison. And I'd like to hear a little bit about, what surprised you most about the discussions you heard in the environments you were? What did you not expect from those discussions?
That's a really good question. Yeah, the book clubs in prison and in schools really, really inspired me. And that's where the book club feels like it's more enriching spiritually than anything else. And yeah, some things that really surprised me were conversations in prison. I had a conversation about self-love, and that conversation ended up turning towards conversations about suicide. And with that, we had a real, you know, it was so interesting because as we're talking about self-love, somebody brought up that they love themselves or they have to love themselves because if not, they're going to want to off themselves because they're in prison for life or for a very long time. And that really sobered the whole room up to really open up about very personal things. And so that was the session that we had in Live in Prison with long-term inmates. So at the table were like majority people that are in there for murder, and they started sharing their stories, and it was really beautiful. I mean, beautiful to an extent where this guy said that he's there, he's done bad things, he doesn't like himself anymore, but he also has to show up for his family as a man. He has to show up for his daughter. His daughter's having a child now, so he's going to be a grandfather. So he really needs to figure out how to find a new way of being a father while being locked in prison. It also helped me question my concept of forgiveness because these guys are sat in jail just waiting and having to contemplate the reason they're in jail. And the main thing that really comes up is their need or their um yeah, I guess their need for forgiveness. If they didn't get it from the state, they would at least like to get forgiveness from a person that they heard from the outside. But yeah, I think the main takeaway from the prison sessions is that we really are all human, no matter what walk of life you come from. We just have the same needs, same wants, and same desires in some way. Or we could at least meet in a common ground, as you said. Because I did a book club session in prison on a Thursday, and then the following day was a Friday. I was at the Road Members Club talking about, I think we were talking about masculinity or something, you know. But to see those, to be able to experience that in a 2 day span was very, very interesting to say the least. But it was really cool to see that in the Road, despite the audience that they have, they were also able to bring up similar topics or similar things as I'd seen in prison the day before.
What was the
So
book you discussed in prison?
I think we had discussed masculinity and fatherhood. Yeah.
Wow. And you said also in school you had some interesting insights from those conversations. What were the books and the insights?
Interestingly enough, I did a book about masculinity and I think it just mainly masculinity in high school. And that was because the teachers were trying to focus on a conversation about gender equality in their curriculum. But as we had the conversation, there were two boys in the class that were, I can't even find a better term than they were like really toxically masculine. And
So the manosphere Andrew Tate discussion.
Yeah, it was fully like I saw it in person, and it was actually kind of scary to see that it had affected these young men so strongly. And when I say young men, they were like 15, 16 years old. They were under 17 at least. Um, and they were talking about, like women are emasculating men these days. What do you know about this? You're 16 years old. But they really had digested this, like you said, the manosphere, the Andrew Tates and stuff. And as we continued the conversation about, masculinity, I asked the question, who is someone that's close to you that you're able to share your feelings with? And then one guy was like, I don't talk about my feelings to anybody. Even my girlfriend doesn't know if I'm doing bad or well. And then, of course, it was really beautiful because we had girls in the room and we had their teacher, of course, who was also a woman. And they were sort of giving rebuttals or asking questions. Come to find out, this young boy is going through, his parents are going through a divorce. And that leads me to ask to realize or to sort of make a conclusion that that was made in Louis Theroux's documentary, that a lot of people that are going through pain, going through hurt, they have to find some sort of like hope or solace and unfortunately, that comes by joining the manosphere or seeing men online that sort of validate their manlyhood, and on top of that, also vilify women, and I don't know what else they would like to vilify in those manosphere podcasts. But it was really sobering to see that in the school space. But it also made me realize that it's a real problem. I used to think it was just something they'd see online, and that you might see a few people that believe in that. But yeah, young boys are really getting caught up into it quickly.
Yeah, it's an incredible conversation. I watched the the manosphere documentary. I'm not sure if I think it was the greatest treatment of the conversation, but also,
Yeah.
of course, we had Adolescence, the series in the UK before, which also triggered these conversations. What I find very interesting, and about the way you talk about these book clubs, is that it feels like it's the questions that you're able to put to people to reflect on themselves that kind of creates this interesting dynamic, and it feels a bit like a debating society, but without the maybe confrontation, more of a, I don't know, kind of like some kind of open format of discussion. What do you think this book club really is? Because traditionally a book club is, we all read this book, and my mom who's elderly lady, has a book club, and they all go and read the book and they discuss different parts of the chapter. You're doing something very, very different. So how would you describe what it is, the experience you're trying to give to people? Because I don't think it's about books. It feels like it's about something inside them, and some kind of sharing.
Yeah, I forgot which me. It was Euronews. Yeah, it was Euronews that mentioned it. Called it was the first media or first anybody that called the book club a reverse book club, and I think that's what it is. It's the conversations and seeing the topics that are in the book that would normally give people more insight to actually want more and a bigger craving to actually understand what the book is talking about. And that's something I've seen through most of my book clubs, where we have a conversation that's based on. I've got a book here called "I'm a Fan" by Sheena Patel, and it's basically talking about social media and obsessiveness that you can go through when it comes to following somebody online, etc. So, for example, if I host a conversation about this, it would be conversations about social media and obsessiveness or something around those lines. I'd bring up questions like, have you stalked somebody online? Have you been stalked online? Um, what do you feel about privacy in the digital age today? And those conversations will bring up different things from the people, of course, as you just said. But at the end of the day, they're all based on quotes that are in this book. And usually, what I find in the book clubs is that people end up wanting to read more, whether it's a fiction, mostly when it's a non-fiction, of course, um, and sometimes when it's poetry as well.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing as well is that people are obviously interested in this idea of a book club. Since I think you've seen from, it's interesting to think that corporates like Netflix or Nike or hotel brands would say, yeah, it's, let's use books to attract people. It's not something that we'd expect. So what do you think is happening in society, that are people, they obviously don't, are still attracted to books, but they
Yeah,
find it difficult? So what do you think? Do people have a kind of love-hate relationship with books, or how would you describe it?
that's a very good question. I don't know exactly what it is. I do believe that books are a media that has never gone out of style. It's a media that has been there from before cinema and a lot of the media that we consume today. Books has always been there. So it seems like something that's um it's almost as, I don't know how to explain it. It's almost as permanent as air or water. It feels, at least. And then we've sort of got into a space where, especially in a post-pandemic world, where we need community and we need to gather. There's a need for that. And on the other hand, books and knowledge have sort of become more luxurious, or a social status symbol, if that makes sense. And we're seeing it in fashion. That's where the fashion brands are now tapping into books, and we've seen it with Dior. Miu Miu has started her own book club as well. And the reason I'm saying, your question, to answer your question, what I was trying to say is, yeah, it feels like there is this weird relationship with books where we don't really have enough time and we don't really have enough energy to read books itself, but the idea of being adjacent or around books and around knowledge and things like that feels like a luxurious experience. And I think that's some need that I'm sort of answering with the book club. On top of that, with the community, and then in the long run, I think for the hotels and the brands, books are a very safe option. It's family friendly, but at the same time, it can also be very thought provocative. So yeah, I think it's really interesting because I have to find out how to market it to people, and it's a very good question you asked.
Yeah, I think there's a physicality of books, which is that you hold an object, which obviously in the digital age where you can get everything on your phone, I think there's something still interesting. And I like just having physical books around. I like to order books, even if I'm going to read, maybe 10% of the books that are there. I still want to be able
Yeah.
to take it, read 3 pages. And I've read a study actually that if you have books in your house, even if they, just the physical presence of the books encourages people to read, even if they're, not naturally readers. So I always kind of buy as many books as I can carry, basically, and encourage my kids to do the same, because I think it's just something interesting. But also holding a book and seeing the pages, I think it is really a great experience. My favorite libraries were in Oxford, actually, where they have these really old books with the leather bounded thing. And when you walk into a library, it's just like it's just beautiful. And you don't, even if you just want to hold a book for an hour in a nice sofa, it's just an experience. It doesn't really matter if you're reading the whole book. Now, given your relationship with books, are you thinking of writing a book yourself?
Yeah, I am thinking of writing. I need to figure out how to write a book, per se, like all the politics around it and the formats. But I do. I think as you read books, you sort of understand the formulas that make you like a chapter, make you like a book. And I've got that, and I've done a lot of academic writing classes and stuff like that. But yeah, my main thing was just to find a topic, and I would like to write a book, as I said earlier, about like the experiences with the inmates. But I would also like to do a book that talks about. I'd like to do a fiction book that talks about the things I'm learning through the people that I'm having conversations with, because I've had conversations about friendship in Finland, Norway, Iceland, France, and Belgium and Germany, and each country has their own sort of take on these different topics. So yeah, I'd like to sort of highlight those things. I would very much like to get into kids' books.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that, the book, especially today, is first and foremost a therapeutic exercise, because you're writing to clarify your own thoughts. For the satisfaction of putting those thoughts in on paper, I feel personally, I've written one book, that there's a kind of satisfaction of just saying I've written a book. I just feel good about it. It just makes me feel, if you like books, you go like, this is a cool thing to do. But I think more importantly, it's if you write a good book, or even a decent book, it takes a long time. It's much harder than to write one article or one thing, because you have to keep going back, you have to edit it, and you have to say, okay, this whole thing has to, I hope one person at least will read it. And I think that's the really great exercise. Like, I just need to put something in, whether it's a story or whatever it is, and you kind of put a lot into something, and honestly, that it's not gonna make you a huge amount of money, or but it's primarily something for yourself that you then hope you put out in the world and do something about. That's my personal take on the writer's experience. Um,
Yeah.
but so have you started writing already, or you're still note taking, or where are you with that?
I have started writing. I think I've written 3 chapters, but as you said, the going back and editing and figuring out how it has to come out and everything. That's what got me stuck. It's this sort of inertia that you end up finding when you realize that you want to share this with the world. I went to a talk by Tanisi Coates, and he mentioned he wrote the message, and Between the World and Me, very polarizing, very controversial books in some sense. But he mentioned how when you're an author and you write a book, this is not a tweet. People are not allowed to tweet back or respond to what you write in this book. The book is out, and you have to make sure that it's solid enough for it to speak for itself, for no one to have to come to you and respond and have a bickering back and forth. And what you just mentioned with editing, that's very important. So that's where I'm kind of stuck because I end up just getting in my own way with it. But yeah, I've got a few ideas, and I'd like to get it on paper. And as you said, the writing experience is something I'm very excited about to just get this out. You know.
Yeah, I think it's a great experience for yourself as a learning experience. It's therapeutic, and then maybe it reaches some audience that you hope. But I think it's something really great to do. Now you have been active in a lot of different areas: musician, creator, all these other things. Do you still have time to do that? Are you still pursuing that? Has this all been put on hold for the book club?
Um, yeah, unfortunately, music has been put on hold for the book club because music has its own ups and downs when it comes to. Before I started music, I used to think that you just had to record a song and put it out there, and you would be okay. But there's so much that goes into it. The same way I'm talking about the book club, finding a business formula, finding a format, differentiating, marketing, etc. And so that the book club got into the way of that. And on the other hand, with creative directing, so I did a campaign for Mintprint, I did a campaign for the city of Brussels, and designed billboards that would be across the city. That's something I do have time for, and I do have quite a lot of headspace for. But it's ups and downs when it comes to agencies and everything. So the book club is my main activity.
Right. Now, I mean, you're not that old, so you've kind of recently graduated. So when you meet people who are still either studying or thinking about what to do with their life, looking back on your current experience, and there's a lot of pessimism, anxiety, and negativity today. People are going like, "Oh my God, the world's falling apart. The job market is disappearing. AI is taking up everything." So,
Yeah.
what are your words of wisdom? What do you recommend to young people who are thinking about what to study and what to do? What is your advice to them?
Wow. I would say find something that's try to figure out what your magic is, what you bring to the world, what you love to do. It's similar to the book Ikigai, which I could suggest. Read that one. Ikigai is a very interesting philosophy about sort of finding something that feeds you, feeds the world, and allows you to feed yourself as well. Um, and then the last thing is just really, if you do study something or if you do go work for a company, just realize that the company needs you. If you're not okay, if you're not well rested, if you're ill, if you unfortunately pass away, the company is going to continue going on without you. So yeah, something you really need to figure out is how to do something that fulfills you beyond having financial wealth, etc. Because you do find a lot of the clients that go to gurus and on meditative retreats and stuff are CEOs and rich people because they need to find inner peace. Yeah. So that's
Right.
to align before you get into it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's great. So find your magic. Love that. Ikigai. I think that's a good framework. Finding this intersection is a nice chart with what you love, what pays you, and what the world needs. I think that's the overlapping circles. And yeah, be aware that this is your pursuit, not the pursuit of someone else or a company. Now, you have quite a few recommendations for us. So tell us what you recommend as books. And I feel I should ask you, what is your favorite book at the moment or in general? And then what are your recommendations for our viewers and listeners?
Okay, so my favorite book in general is The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. It's a spiritual book that talks about just disconnecting yourself from worldly things. But the books that I wanted to recommend are How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney, which is a really interesting conversation, not just about how Europe underdeveloped Africa, but also what is development, what is underdevelopment, and then also gives you a better idea of how geopolitical situations work between these two continents. Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, which talks about a robot. It's a fictional book. It's family friendly, and it's a robot that's designed to be a child's friend. And in the conversation of AI and digitalization and things of that nature, I think this is a very good book for people to get into without getting too caught up into it. It's very philosophical as well. And finally, After Dark by Haruki Murakami, which is a book that just feels like an old school film. It just feels good to read. And if you are a fast reader, I'd suggest reading it at the same time because each chapter is a certain time at night, and you could read it overnight. It's a pretty short read.
Excellent. And you have a podcast recommendation?
Yes, I've got a podcast recommendation called 20,000 Hertz, and that's a podcast
Mm-hmm.
that explains sounds, explains sounds and music. So there's one episode that dives into how they came up with the iPhone ringtone or the iPhone, sort of when you get a message in iPhone, the ding, I don't know how to explain it, but the episode one each episode focuses on different things, and that episode focused on they interviewed a person at Apple that actually designed that sound, how they came up with that sound, and why it's important on a psychological level. And there's different episodes that talk about like elevator music. Why is elevator music a thing? The sounds that whales make, the science behind that, and that's something I like to geek over and just see the small different things because sounds do design the world that we're in, and they have a psychological connection. I would suggest or recommend the one episode on sonic branding, and that's I think it explains itself. It talks about how brands or companies are able to use a sound to brand themselves.
Mm.
So that's a very
And
interesting episode.
that's a brilliant topic. Now, my daughter is obsessed with sounds. She's into movies, but the sound part of movies. And it's true. I mean, if you think about it, the core weighting music, I think that's something that, people should have a warrant for the arrest of the people who designed some of these musics. And then things like the ringtone or the thing that pings you when you have a message, which creates a kind of like post-traumatic stress disorder in people. Like, you have these things that create these triggered responses that I
Yeah.
think have a huge impact on your concentration, your ability to focus, your ability to talk to people, because if there's a buzz or something, it pulls you away. So very interesting. I will definitely check it out. And then you had a couple of Instagram accounts that you wanted to share.
Yes. Oh, yes. So the first one is Sam Euclid. He's a Greek slash New Yorkan photographer slash filmographer, and his page is just very peaceful. He's my favorite Instagrammer because he manages to capture cities, locations, and people and intimate moments in a way that I've never really seen online. So it's very peaceful to watch if you want to get into content. There's What's Culture, which is a page that is sort of like an archive of different cultural moments, and I've worked with them with the book club where we have reading lists on a monthly basis. And this month we released a reading list for Michael Jackson because the movie just dropped. And last month we did a reading list of pivotal women authors for International Women's Month. The month before that we did the reading list that connects to Bad Bunny's last album as he did the performance at the Super Bowl. But yeah, all that to say, What's Culture is a really cool page that has nice pictures, and there are weekly quizzes, which is also very fun. And then finally, the book club.
And is the book club the main place to find out about the book club? You have a website. Where do we find you, and where do we find more about the book club?
I'm trying to finalize the website this quarter. But as for now, it's mainly through the Instagram of the book club. So it's the bookclub.eu. And that's where I update, either book recommendations, the upcoming events, and different books and quotes that we have prepared.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this, Kritikos. It's been really interesting and inspiring. I'm blown away by the work you've done with the book club, and this totally original way of approaching books and conversations, which I think is absolutely needed. So I wish you the best of luck with the next steps in the evolution of this. I think those conversations are needed. Those conversations are incredibly useful to have, and I think it's a great device to organize that, because I don't think people necessarily know how to have some difficult conversations in today's environment where people are a little afraid to express some opinion. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for sharing some of this with us. We will see you online or perhaps at your next book club session. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the ZNL podcast. Did you like it? If so, please share it on your social media, subscribe, and give us a comment. We will see you again on the next episode. Until then, remember, stay always one step ahead.